Welcome back to Sunday Vibes, one and all. We're back in the Phoenix pub by Oxford Circus. It's me, it's Christopher, and it is Patrick Van Straten. Gentlemen, no questions about clothes today, although you have got a new top on, so we should just bring that up. I do like it.
Thank you.
What are we up to this weekend? Thought I'd throw that one in there today.
Oh, go on. A different genre of small talk. I love it. You have clearly thought about this.
I've been planning that question for weeks.
Baby ballet, Saturday morning.
Baby
I'm
ballet?
Seeing my in-laws.
He has a
Saturday
child, by the way.
afternoon.
He's not just attending a random baby ballet.
Then friend activities. I got a party on Sunday. What about you?
I think Six Nations tomorrow, rugby day. So
great.
jeans and shoes for me. What about you?
Like every day.
I am going back to Leicester.
Oh, okay.
I'm going out for a curry. Shout out Dine India in Countersthorpe, the best curry in Leicester.
This is not a sponsored video, but if you are a curry house that wants to sponsor us, please do get in touch.
That would be the
It
best
would be
sponsor
great,
we could feasibly
It really
get,
would.
yeah.
Anyway, today we are going to be looking and doing some mid-season predictions because, we can't make bigger tits of ourselves than we already have. We've got a number of different categories, obviously the obvious ones, and we've also thrown it out to the Discord who've come up with some slightly more alternative prediction categories. We'll come on to those a little bit later. I think we should start early doors with our title winners. Now, I do have our predictions from the start of the season. Pat, you didn't do any, so you've lucked your way out of that big time.
Yeah, I really have.
We both said Man City, me and you, Chris.
Yes.
For this one. Are we changing our minds, gents?
No, I'm going to stick.
Jeff.
I'm going to stick to my guns. Arsenal, I think, are favourites at this point. I'm going to stand by.
You're saying City?
Yeah, I'm going to stand by the scenario I painted a couple of weeks ago, where I think if City aren't perfect in the two games against Arsenal, if they don't get 2 wins, if they're not convincing wins, the title will go to North London. So if Arsenal scrape a draw in there and it's a closely fought encounter in the other, I think that will be enough. Obviously, let's give some context.
So who are you saying?
Context,
Man
Chris
City,
over here. Yeah, it's Man City, but I mean, the Gunners are currently 5 points ahead with the game in hand, aren't they? So it's looking pretty favourable. They do play each other on the 15th, so that's going to be a seismic game, and then in late April as well. What I wanted to ask you, because I actually haven't garnered your thoughts on Jorginho yet, how much closer do you think Arsenal's January transfer of business has brought them to a possible title? Because, City, on the other hand, João Cancelo out, no one of note in. Is that sort of tipped the balance, so to speak?
Well, I was going to predict Arsenal to win anyway. I tried to take my Arsenal supporter hat off, and if I weren't a pessimistic Arsenal supporter, if this were like Liverpool, top by 5 points with a game in hand, then I'd say of course they're going to go ahead and win it. I actually think Arsenal had an excellent window. They really did. Like, I'm not a particularly big Jorginho fan, but Arteta clearly is, and I do think Jorginho can play that role. He's actually a much better game controller than Partey. It's not much of a dribbler, but Partey hasn't been this season. Partey's completing 0.7 dribbles a game this season. But everyone talks about how important his dribbling is. Well, it's not really. What's important is his press resistance and his ability to break the press with a pass. Now, if there's one guy who's great at that, it's Jorginho. Arsenal have essentially exchanged El Neni for Jorginho. That's a huge upgrade. They've brought in Trossard, so Trossard's now their next kind of attacker off the bench, replacing, Reece Nelson was actually injured, but essentially replacing Reece Nelson. And Kivior looks like a really interesting centre-back prospect, though I don't really anticipate he'll play that much this season unless he wows instantaneously. I think Arsenal had a really good window that addressed a bunch of weaknesses in their side. Like, none of the players set my world on fire, but they don't need to. They're backups. And what we said could cost Arsenal was a lack of depth. Well, now they look like they've got way more depth. And actually, City don't look that far ahead of them depth-wise. Obviously, like if a centre-back goes down at City, then they can bring on insane quality. But their left-back slot, I would say, is pretty weak. Their central midfield, as always, is a little bit questionable. And if Haaland got injured for a while, yes, they could play Alvarez there, but you don't want to go half a season playing Alvarez there. So the fact that Arsenal have survived this period with Nketiah, the fact that they've brought in Trossard, Jorginho, I think that this was a really, really solid window. And as you say, if anyone's going to overhaul a team like Arsenal in this position, it is City. But if Arsenal make a mistake, they've still got a margin for error. If City make a mistake, it starts to get hard. This weekend, Arsenal go away to Everton. They'll have already played that game by the time you see this. And City go away to Spurs. Now, if Arsenal get a win at Everton and City drop points at Spurs, then suddenly it becomes a really kind of dangerous position for City. So in that sense, there's far more pressure on City to keep winning than there is on Arsenal.
I look at POTY Labs, which is obviously a supercomputer that works out how difficult a side's run is.
I think you can do that with a normal computer. I don't think you need a supercomputer.
I know, but that sounded more impressive. That sounded like
I think we could get Doogie to do it.
Yeah. I'd applied more
with a
effort
calculator
than just banging POTY Labs into Google. But they think that Manchester City have the easiest run in, but crucially Arsenal second easiest. I think the margins are going to be that fine that the title will be decided in that
That's
direction.
mad,
That's interesting. I feel like
Arsenal's running is not easy, but they've played so many hard games away from home, like your Brightons and taking points off Manchester United at home,
winning away at Spurs,
and winning. Yeah, exactly. I think it definitely favours them, but equally, I for sure think it's Arsenal. Yeah, I think Man City can't afford to make a single slip up, and I feel like this is a transitional season for them. I wouldn't be surprised to see at the end of this weekend an 8-point gap with a game in hand, and if that is the case, I don't see Manchester City being able to claw that back. I think they had a pretty horrendous window as far as January's going. I think Arsenal had the best window in the league for what they needed. Obviously Chelsea we can talk about as probably technically the best because they spent the most money, but I think what Arsenal needed now, they had the best window of any side, and I just think their form trumps Manchester City's experience. I don't see a world in which Arsenal drop 8 points across the second half of the season.
Experience, that's why Jorginho coming in at this point of the season will be really helpful for the younger players. I think Arsenal have the youngest squad in the Premier League, right? I think people are overlooking that factor as well, that he has pedigree, that he's been in situations like this, and not a lot of those players in Arsenal's team have.
I think people are overlooking as well the fact that Man City have looked so clunky. Like, it's not a flowing Manchester City side. If it was a flowing Manchester City side that were demolishing sides, I would be saying, they can put 10 wins. I don't see the City side being able to...
The FA Cup game as well. You look at the FA Cup game and you thought, wow, if City go and punish Arsenal, that could really shake the confidence of a young side, as you're saying. And Arsenal played, 6 B team members, and went toe-to-toe with City for most of the game and were in the hunt the whole time. Well, they're going to be really up for the game at the Emirates on the 15th. If Arsenal get a win in that game, I think that could kind of be enough to push them into the back half of the season. And, as we've said again, City haven't had a big injury to Haaland yet. They haven't had to cope with that, which is kind of the nightmare scenario for them, with the team really geared around him.
They've had a lot of injuries elsewhere, though, haven't they?
Sure, but, Arsenal went through a period without Zinchenko. Arsenal have obviously had, Gabby Jesus, their £50 million striker, out for 3 months. I don't know, City, the whole point that we say with City is it doesn't matter who gets injured because they've got so much depth. I think that's less true this year than it's been in the past because they are so intended now to kind of funnel chances towards Haaland. It'll be really interesting, that game at the Emirates.
I think you can excuse them for being clunky to an extent because, players with less than 900 minutes under their belt include Diaz, Mahrez, Kyle Walker. Players with less than 500 minutes, I think, Julian Alvarez, Laporte, Sergio Gomez, not really important. Rico Lewis just coming to the side now. Calvin Phillips could have a big role to play in the second half of the season. And the reason... So you expect them to get better now that all these players are back, and this is the first time Pep's had a fully fit squad at his disposal. And the reason I wasn't massively sort of overawed by Cancelo leaving is because they sort of have changed their build-up this season, haven't they? It's been pretty noticeable in recent fixtures that when Ake is on the left, I don't know if this is because of his limitations or just because it's Pep's preference now, but Rico Lewis, or the right-back, steps into midfield to form a 2 with Rodrigo, doesn't he? And they play just a 3 at the back. I mean, it does leave some spaces out wide, probably why John Stones has done his hamstring again, because he was playing right centre-back and right-back for the last 3 or 4 games. But it has been interesting in the way they've changed their build-up. That maybe made Cancelo a little less important. Obviously, he put forward the reason of not enough game time.
Even though he was one of their most used players.
Yeah, 15 starts
as going. Clearly a fallout behind the scenes. Obviously not ideal for Pep that he has left. But I do think they'll be much better in the second half of the season. They're going to have to be,
aren't they? They cannot. They can't not be. They have to be perfect.
But they're also staring down the barrel of a midfield rebuild in the summer, aren't they, as well? I do think this is a City side in transition.
It's definitely a City side in transition.
More so than we would have anticipated at the start of the season. Gundogan was out of contract in 33 in the summer.
Yeah.
KDB 32 this year.
Another window where people talk about Bernardo Silva. Maybe
Bernardo Silva wanted to leave in the summer.
I know, but they
Mahrez will be like the Mahrez. I think is actually really part of the story with City this season. I think City look amazing when Mahrez is playing really well.
Yeah.
And in the rest of the time when he can't quite beat his man as often as he used to, City look really, really pedestrian. And I think that is a serious problem for them. And also Foden's goal contribution is pretty good, but
it's fell off a cliff recently.
I don't think anyone can argue that Foden has been at his best this season after winning Young Player of the Year the last 2 years in a row.
And also post World Cup, I think it's one goal involvement in 15 games or 14 games.
And Grealish, probably the inverse of that. His output still hasn't been meteoric, but actually his performances have been really, really bloody good when he's on the pitch.
It's
well, in the big games that I've watched.
I think there's just too many variables for me, so I'm going to stick with Arsenal. I'm going to stick with Arsenal and say that Manchester City finished second. I assume then you are sticking with Arsenal second. You're not putting Manchester United in there like Gary Neville did.
No, Arsenal second.
Okay, so we've all got the same top two. We will roll on to our top four then. Now, our pre-season top fours, I can rattle off for you here. Pat, again, you didn't do one. It was, for me, I had City, Liverpool, Spurs, Arsenal. You had City, Liverpool, Spurs, Arsenal. So we both had the same top fours. Pat, you probably would have said something similar, I would imagine.
I don't think I'd have had Arsenal in there. I think I'd have probably had Chelsea in there.
Maybe Chelsea in there.
I presume there's going to be. It took us a little bit of convincing as well to put Arsenal in there. I remember, towards the end of the window, we were like, okay, maybe Arsenal are scraping it now. But there was a serious conversation about like who has had the better window, Spurs or Arsenal. I think most of us sided with Spurs, and that kind of convinced us to put them in ahead of Arsenal. And now look at it.
But I feel like there's going to be substantial changes here in these extra two spaces. Where we had Spurs and Arsenal. Do we all think United are going to squeeze in?
Yes.
Well, you asked me to do this on We Need to Talk.
Yeah.
And I didn't really pay it much thought, when you asked me to do it probably at 6 o'clock on a Friday.
Yeah. You did have United in there,
I had Arsenal... No, sorry, Manchester United third.
Yeah. And do you think they're going to finish third this season?
I do. I just think they're in the ascendancy. They've come on... They've made such significant progress. If Casemiro stays fit, I think third or fourth is very achievable.
Yeah, I think if Casemiro stays fit, United should be finishing third from this position. I think it's very, very heavily reliant on his fitness, though. He is by far and away United's best player.
I think you could play Sabitzer as a six though in a pinch. I think his defensive output has really gone up since he's gone to Bayern, but he's a really good signing for you because he's capable. So he's capable of big defensive output, good progressive passing, while getting shots from midfield, and that is an interesting combination that Ten Hag seems to want. And I think it would be great cover for Eriksen, but the structure is improved now in such a way that, of course, if Casemiro goes out, then it's an issue for you. But structurally, you are more sound and able to... you look at the way that Aaron Wan-Bissaka's come on, you're just able to cover the pitch in a different way.
I'm excited by Sabitzer, though, because the one thing you would potentially label Christian Eriksen with is, he's been sensational for United. I think was it second most assists in the league this season behind KDB. I think he's got 7, or at least level with somebody else. I think the one thing you can label him with, as good as his attacking output is he does get run off a lot. Like defensively, his contribution is extremely low. From about 50 minutes onwards, especially in the second half of the season, he has been tiring quite rapidly, and we've had to look to adapt to use Fred in those positions. Whereas I think Sabitzer is probably not going to be like that, where he tires so early. He's not going to be run off as easily defensively. He might not contribute as much in the final third creatively, although when he was at Leipzig, some of his numbers were quite impressive in terms of balls into the penalty box and shots from outside the area and stuff like that. So I think it's a really smart bit of business for United, given they had 12 hours to get it done. It's a rare sort of, United actually done well there.
Like Pat said, he's played in transition a lot at Leipzig, and he's also played in a possession-heavy system at Bayern Munich. And Manchester United have kind of flip-flop between those two systems depending on their opposition this season, so well versed in both. So I just think that acumen will be really, really useful. I've not really thought about him in a United shirt yet. Do you know what I mean? Like he's not impacted my opinion on Manchester United as of yet, but excited to see how that develops.
They've become really adept as well at United of breaking down low blocks, which is like something that was really troublesome in the Oli days,
apart from Anthony,
Jose days. Anthony has been
shocking.
He's not started well, but definitely does add balance to the team. It's hard to describe, but when he's not playing on that right-hand side, United look like a much worse side, even though he as an individual isn't performing particularly well. Well, that's the issue, isn't it? When he's not there, you don't have a right winger to play there.
Yeah. I mean, what I will say about Anthony is it's not like he has Aaron Wan-Bissaka overlapping an awful lot. Like he's not the most expansive fullback, is it?
Yeah.
So he is picking up the ball and beating his man, has to beat his man one-on-one an awful lot. So doesn't get a lot of support in that regard. But yeah, man, just every time I've watched him, lacks incision, lacks physicality. People think I'm getting on at him, but
you are, mate.
I love a Brazilian winger. I normally give them the bandwidth, but yeah, he just isn't doing enough. And when Alejandro Garnacho comes on, just that added bit of physicality. I know he doesn't play on the right, but when he comes on the left and you move someone over to the right, you look at instantly more threatening.
Yeah, I think to a level, but I think when Bruno gets moved out there, I think we look worse as a team,
really?
And that's consistently been the move. Is that Fred comes on for the right winger Anthony, Bruno gets moved wide, Christian Eriksen plays. It's like we definitely look worse as a unit. You know, we've tried it multiple times, notably away at Crystal Palace where we drew 1-1. I thought it really hampered us progressively. We had lost all of our impetus on that right hand side. So yes, he's not been great individually, but because you don't have any other right winger and you're like shoehorning somebody in that position, the balance of the team gets thrown off a little bit.
That's why it'd be interesting if Sancho comes back to fitness.
Yeah, although we saw him come back and be brought in as a 10.
Sure, but I think that's...
And Bruno go back
but I think that's an experiment. I think, that's an interesting thing to try out. It would be... I mean, he's clearly a superior player to Anthony, so it would be nice to see him out there.
Yeah, but we all think Manchester United get in there. That leaves one slot open, and I think there's some disagreement here.
Madness.
And I think it's really close, actually, for me anyway, between Newcastle and Tottenham.
What's the points difference between them?
Let's have a look right now. We've got it up in front of us here. Tottenham 36, Newcastle 39, so 3 points.
And Spurs play City this weekend.
Yeah,
I think,
but there is a game in hand.
There's at least from me, don't speak for you two, there's an expectancy from me that Newcastle will drop off at some point, despite the fact, actually, if you look at their underlying numbers, they're actually the third best team in the country. So maybe that's doing them a disservice, expecting them to drop off, and they do have a relatively okay deep squad in certain positions. But if something was to happen to Bruno Guimaraes, I could see it coming unstuck, for example. Although they've dealt with injuries to various forwards pretty well throughout the season, haven't they? With Almiron chipping in with those decisive goals.
3 games, he's banned, isn't he?
Yeah, but he's not going to run that hot for the rest of the season, is he?
Just brought in Gordon.
Old Anthony. Yeah, I mean, I did want to ask you
boys, £45 million worth.
How you think he's going to be utilised, because his numbers absolutely
shocking price,
stinking.
I think that's an alright signing.
From a physical perspective, his numbers were great for winger right.
Yeah.
But in terms of output, in terms of ball progression, really, really poor. But that's a team thing rather than an individual thing.
His numbers are stinking on a horrible Everton team.
Yeah,
his numbers were bad his numbers have never been good.
But he's never played in a decent side.
Sure,
a decent coach.
but that's the point. You're gambling that he will be good under a better coach. You don't know.
How do you think he's going to be incorporated?
I think he'll be incorporated in a similar sort of way to Joe Willock, who I think has been absolutely sensational this season, as like either a shuttling 8 or like a bit like when they've pushed Joe Linton into that higher wide left position in that sort of role. I think that he's going to play quite significant minutes across the second half of the season, Anthony Gordon. And I just, Eddie Howe is getting massive output out of some really mid players. Like, I think Sean Longstaff's fine, but he's not a European level player for me, and is playing out of his skin every single week. So I actually back Eddie Howe to get some really good output out of Anthony Gordon across the second half of the season, even though I've not put them in my top 4.
They are running hot as well, Newcastle. Like they are the third best team in the country by the metrics, but they have been running hot.
Yeah, Almiron in particular.
In defence and in attack, Almiron is way out over his skis.
But he could play in that role. Anthony Gordon out there as well. He's a versatile player.
That's where I'd expect him to.
Seen him play in the under-21 setup for England in a multitude of positions on the left and the right in that midfield 3. So I think that it's very possible that they get in there. But I just think because of the amount they press and the physical exertion that is in that squad, I do think across the second half of the season that will kind of
be a big contributing
it's going to be a big effect, I think. And I think just physically, if they drop 10%, then I can see results falling away a little bit, and that will just open the door for Tottenham. And I think that Pedro Porro pushes them back up there with the quality of Harry Kane.
What they have in their favour this season is the fact that the chasing pack aren't at their very best. I can't see them approaching anything that resembles their very best in the next 2 or 3 months. Tottenham, for example, still feeling a state of flux despite only being 3 points behind them. Conte is now not going to be on the sideline for a few weeks because he had gallbladder surgery, right?
Yeah.
Remains to be seen how that impacts
the
side. Yeah, exactly. His force of personality not being there. Are we going to discount Brighton? Currently 6th?
Yeah.
I think 5th by expected points. Could De Zerbi pull off a madness? I wanted to pay them their dues before we move on.
Not for me.
It would be amazing.
It would be awesome, but
they're really good, man.
They are
They're
amazing.
Really good.
They are amazing.
Since the World Cup, they have been phenomenal.
Not top four, but disrupting that.
For sure, they could finish
sixth dynamic.
I think Evan Ferguson's injury is not great for them either. I think he's looked really, really good over this last month and a half since coming into that side. And if he is out for, I've read varying reports, but I think I read one that he might be out for the entire season. That is
really disappointing,
not great for
especially the way it happened.
Really depressing. How he didn't get sent off, I don't know.
But that's the thing. Like, if the season was starting now, despite the fact that Newcastle, had a really hot first half of the season, I would look at Brighton in that pack with Manchester United and Newcastle. They've certainly been good enough to merit being put up there. I think Matoma has been one of probably the top 3 players in the league. I know you were saying Rashford's been the best player in the league lately, but
since the World Cup,
let's be honest. Matoma, I think, has been better.
No, since the World Cup, Rashford's been
I think that's an absolutely crazy opinion. But I just all I'm saying really is that I think Brighton have been playing like a side competing for Champions League football.
Yeah.
Gap might just be a little bit too big. Depth might be a little bit too big.
That's it for me. And I think I'm actually going to discount Newcastle. I think I'm going to Manchester United 3rd, Tottenham 4th. I just think a team with Harry Kane can't finish outside the top 4.
Just been crap
on his current form. I know, but that's the thing. They've not been good, and they're still 3 points behind them.
I'm tossing and turning between the two. It's a flip of a coin between Newcastle and Tottenham.
Newcastle have had a lot of draws, but the thing is about Newcastle's numbers is they're really hard to work out because quite often they've turned a 1-goal lead into a 2-goal lead very quickly. They've spent the least time trailing of any team in the league, which is partially about quality, but it's also a lot about luck. And so they haven't had to dig themselves out of holes, or press teams that are just passing it around the back very much because they've been down a goal. Like, all those things do have a bearing.
Yeah.
Well, they have failed to score in 3 of the last 4, I think, haven't they?
Yeah. I don't know, it sounds fairly obvious when we keep honing in on Bruno Guimaraes, take the best player out of any side, it's going to get weaker, right? But he is, when I watch him, I just can't fathom how any top 4 side has missed out on him. He's one of the best box-to-box presences in the Premier League, full stop. So when he's out of the side now for a run of 3 games, right, because it was a straight red, I do think we'll see it'll be informative, won't it, as to how Newcastle can deal with his absence. And if they can deal with his absence, I'll be a lot more convinced of their top 4 credentials. But at the minute, I'm having them 5th.
All right, from the top of the table down to the bottom of the table, then the relegation dogfight. And it is, I think, going to be one of the best relegation battles of recent memory because there's so many teams in and amongst it, isn't there? There's 6 points separating 13th and 20th at the moment. Does anybody think it's not going to be the current bottom 3, Bournemouth, Everton, Southampton?
I can't remember who I put for this.
You put Bournemouth, Everton, Southampton.
I put Bournemouth, Fulham, Southampton, I think,
Fulham?
at the very start of the season.
Oh, right. Okay.
The pre-season ones.
Jesus Christ. I was like, what do you think is going to happen?
The pre-season.
I think that's fair.
The pre-season one, you had Bournemouth, Fulham, Everton. I had Bournemouth, Fulham, Forest.
I had Bournemouth, Forest and somebody. I don't remember.
But what do we think about now?
I actually think, let's start with 20th then. I actually think Everton are going to finish rock bottom.
Do you?
I really do.
I think they'll be better under Dyche than they were under Lampard.
I agree.
I've also said in previous episodes that Dyche I back him to, scrape 17th.
He's the best manager they could have got.
Yeah, I agree. But now looking at some of the moves Southampton have made, some of the personnel they've brought in, Sulemana.
Do we like Iheanacho?
I can't wait.
I can't wait to see him.
But Bournemouth actually had a fairly reasonable January window, didn't they?
They did.
So now,
for the future though, more than for the present.
But after a few of those acquisitions, I'm flip-flopping again between Everton narrowly staving off relegation and finishing rock bottom. Like the people around them have strengthened significantly. I also think Wolves are going to bounce back in big fashion now that Lopetegui's heading them up. West Ham are in 16th, and
their underlying numbers are fine.
All the numbers point towards a mid-table side, right?
Same with Leeds.
Leeds and Leicester have strengthened significantly, and you imagine that they'll pull away from the race fairly soon, which doesn't leave Everton with a lot of wiggle room.
I've got to say, Leicester low-key had a great window.
What with
getting Jose Perez out the door?
I think Tete was great. I think Tete was
Sousa.
particularly good. I don't know about that, but Tete great.
Leeds, yes, I think they had a great window, but they haven't won a game since end of October or the first week of November. Maybe November the 5th was their last win in the Premier League. So the signings,
for a month
the signings do have to hit the ground really well, don't they? Like Rutter has to score some goals. because nobody scored
somebody
any goals.
needs to
Somebody
score.
needs to hit the net.
Or Patrick Bamford's body needs to
score some goals,
mend itself. Or
Because Rodrigo's out now.
But I agree. I think they had an all right window. I think Weston McKennie was a fantastic sign for a relegation threatened side. Like West Ham, okay. Danny's, I know he's out for like 6 weeks, but I'm sure he'll score a couple of goals. Wolves, I just backed Lopetegui to get him out of there. And then what? Forest. It's like I don't see how it's not those three.
Are you arriving?
Forest are crap.
The same sort of
They're
conclusion.
not crap. They are
terrible.
crap. Morgan Gibbs-White is
terrible.
really good and dragging them through games.
But they've still been terrible. They've been terrible all season. They're still terrible.
They are improving.
They're
improving week by week.
The only thing that makes me not put them in there is that the other teams are also crap, and Forest have several teams between them and the relegation zone. The squad should have the quality. They have the squad of like a mid-table team.
They've not been terribly managed. It's
he's
incredibly
done an awful
difficult.
job.
He has not done an awful job. It's been an incredibly difficult situation to try and fit 29 fresh players
he didn't have to do
into
that.
a 25-man squad. Yes, he did.
No, he didn't. Well, so like whatever happens, then Steve Cooper's done a good job. He's incapable of having
If
done a
Steve
bad
Cooper
job.
keeps Nottingham Forest in the league, he has done a good job.
In this case, I think it will only be because there are 3 teams in the league that are so bad they should probably go straight to League One.
Not necessarily, because they're 13th at the moment.
Absolutely shocking.
They're 13th, they're above Leicester, Leeds, West Ham, Wolves.
But those teams are all better than them, apart from maybe Wolves.
If they finish 13th, he's done an unbelievable
They're
job.
lucky that they're that low. This is like when people were saying like, oh, Lazio, they're really high up in the table in Italy, and you're like, yeah, because Juventus got a points deduction. Like if West Ham have been horribly unlucky this season. They're clearly better than that. Leicester are clearly better than Forest. Leeds are better than Forest. All those
But
teams
you
are better
would have
than
expected
Forest.
all these teams to be better than Forest pre-season.
Yeah, and they are.
The fact that they're not.
They are.
Because they're
unlucky to end up there. Is that how it works? Like, because they're below them, they're there
for Nottingham Forest fans, they would have absolutely taken 21 points at the halfway stage of the season.
Well, Forest fans can want whatever they want, but they've still been bad.
I think they started very poorly, but over the last post-World Cup, I think they've improved drastically.
I think the squad that they've built should be better than it is.
Yeah,
right
I agree, but I think that squad takes time to gel into positions that work. It wasn't until post-World Cup that he found the midfield three of Freuler, Yates and Mangala that started to work. It wasn't until post-World Cup, since Awaniyi started to find a position slightly left and drifting in with Morgan Gibbs-White as false nine.
So what you're saying is it took Steve Cooper 4 months to come up with something remotely workable.
Yeah, but that is the case. You signed 23 new players. It's never been done before effectively in the Premier League.
That's kind of my point. If they were in 17th, I'd probably tip them to get relegated.
I think they're improving at a rapid rate. So, okay. I mean, they're only 4 points off.
I feel like you said that in like November.
They're only 4 points off. So if you think that Steve Cooper's doing such a bad job...
4 points is a lot in the relegation race. Like Southampton, sometimes I look at Southampton and I think, this team will never win a game again.
So we all think Southampton, despite Sulemana coming in, Oyonnachu coming in, they don't have the legs underneath Nathan Jones?
Sulemana, I think we all like Sulemana, but he was like not a starter for Rennes. So he's got to come in and just... get starts and immediately look like a Premier League quality winger, and he is still 20, I think.
Yeah,
I find that quite hard to see. Orsic, I can see making an immediate impact more.
I think what Suleiman has going in his favour, maybe there's some parallels here with Steve Cooper versus the other managers/team situation, is that what is in front of him in the pecking order, or whoever he's competing with, he could prove is not so great. I think he could upgrade it pretty quickly. So they've got El Yunusi and Armstrong. I think 1 or 2 goal contributions between them, despite a decent amount of minutes under the belt. And what we have in Sulemana is not a seasoned pro, has not had a lot of minutes in this campaign, a decent amount of appearances in the previous campaign, but someone that, when he's played, has been one of Europe's best dribblers, has been great at progressing play because of his physicality. So at least he's a bit of a wild card. At least he's very different to what they've got at the moment and will provide some threat. Like teams that play a higher line will have to keep one eye on him, as opposed to Stuart Armstrong, who probably should have been phased out the side a couple of seasons ago, or El Yunusi. I think, it was a much improved performance for Southampton against Newcastle in the EFL Cup. Like Lavia looked like he's starting to grow into that role as the conduit between defence and midfield, or midfield and attack. I think there's a really good young spine there. Unfortunately, it might be too late for them to stay up. If they'd been able to blend this talent with some good seasoned pros, then maybe. But I'm at least starting to see a bit of a vision creep through. I could see this young Southampton side faring really well in the Championship and coming straight back up. But they've spent the money to stay in the league now, haven't they?
Like Bournemouth have signed really young, haven't they? I think Bournemouth have signed players that if
Watara,
they go
Semenya,
down. I mean, if they go down,
Bournemouth,
you're thinking, they got Hamid Traore in as well.
Good signing.
I think if they go down, they've bought players to bring them back up as well, haven't they? But quite a lot of Bournemouth signings are like theoretically good in that that role. Like
same as Southampton.
Yeah,
like we all have players we like at Southampton, but they're not actually good yet. Like this is the thing: a good young player is not the same. Is actually worse than like a mid-table standard Premier League contributor.
Unless they go like supernova, which is obviously not the best.
And it's hard for like centre backs to go supernova, for example, right?
But not also, the best premise to stay up on. But.
And they made a bit of a mistake. They traded in Hasenhüttl for a sort of like pound shop Hasenhüttl knockoff, who is basically playing the same style, which I think is really funny. But yeah, I mean, so these teams have made quite good decisions from the point of view of not being totally shafted if they do get relegated.
The business at the bottom end of the Premier League in January has been brutal for Everton. It's because it's been smart.
Horrendous window.
It's been smart, it's been ambitious, and like if we were talking about Everton in December and we didn't know about any of these signings and we were like, they're going to get Sean Dyche, and we'd be like, okay, there's maybe enough talent at Everton when matched with Dyche's pragmatic sensibilities to keep them up. But I look at the transfers coming in now. Wolves, second bottom by expected points. They've bought in João Gomez, Lamina, Sarabia, Dawson. Cunha, they've got a really good manager.
I mean, we should talk about Everton though, shouldn't we? Because
I don't think the squad is worse than Burnley squads that Dyche kept up.
You don't?
No, I really don't. Like talent-wise, I think it's absolutely the equal of them.
At the top, in the starting 11, but if you take two of the midfielders out, like if
that was kind of true at Burnley as well. You'd take a midfielder out, and there would just be like a guy they found in the pub.
But it would be players that were like really like. If you take Amadou Onana out of the team, who plays in midfield?
Yeah, it would be like literally anyone.
Whereas if you took Jack Cork out and you played Brownhill, it was like, okay, we're trading like for like.
Yeah, because it's like we've got a crap player and we've got another crap player behind him. Whereas Onana is like quite a decent player, and behind him there's nothing. Like I know what you're saying. Like I don't disagree, but like I think Dyche's football is quite well suited to getting them much more solid fairly quickly.
Yeah.
If they can get any striker on the pitch, then I kind of back Dyche to get a tune out of them. I don't know. It's not a particularly strenuous system for players to learn. It's quite straightforward, and I mean that in a good way. I don't know. I just think if anybody's gonna get something out of them quite quickly, it could be Dyche. I don't know. I toyed with saying Dyche would keep him up.
I mean, Moshiri saying 2 weeks ago in a live television interview that he was going to sign a striker, not signing a striker, going for Andre Ayew as a free agent, losing out on him to Nottingham Forest is absolutely farcical.
I love it.
It is, and I know he's denied categorically, hasn't he, publicly saying that the club is not for sale. I mean, the lack of investment in the squad points towards
despite getting 45 million for Anthony Gordon, which is now plastering over.
And you look at that lineup, if Dominic Calvert-Lewin isn't fit, which he's not been able to be for most of the season and throughout large chunks of his career.
Who is Dwight McNeil crossing the ball to?
Who are they playing?
In the squad?
No, sold. Gone.
They got rid of him.
Mate, Rondon is now playing for River Plate.
Sick. So they've got Mopé.
That's it.
They've got Calvert-Lewin.
They bought Ellis Sims back.
Do you know...
Man, I love this.
Niels and Kunku returned from his loan spell at Cardiff. That was like their only significant in Everton. And I've been reading my own research.
Who's on the free agent list?
Bournemouth bottom by expected points, Everton second bottom, Wolves third bottom. But, like, I mean, we could speak about Palace as well. Obviously, we spoke about Forest. Leicester, I don't think are a million miles away from it. But again, had a great window. I mean... Forest, Adrian, I don't think we even spoke about this when you two got into your little tiff about Forest. Chris Wood, like Danilo.
Why didn't Everton go
John
for him?
Joe Shelvey. These are all, these are players that Everton could potentially have gone for, but they will help Forest in their bid to stay up. These are seasoned Premier League players.
They try and get Giroud?
Not Danilo, but
Everton tried to get Giroud, Elanga, and about 30.
Imagine Giroud's agent pitching that to me.
34 players.
No, Elanga would have been a terrible signing for them. It's like, I love Iwobi. I think Iwobi's been one of their best players, but like I'm I'm intrigued to see what Iwobi looks like under Sean Dyche.
Ilian and Dye, they tried to get it, didn't they, out of Sheffield United, and I think he went well with 12 points clear of third place. I think we're more likely to be in the Premier next season than you. Okay,
but
so we're all agreeing.
What project are players joining? That's why they can't sign them.
So we're all agreeing Bournemouth Southampton.
It feels terminal.
Yeah? Bournemouth Southampton, Everton?
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on then to Manager of the Year.
I can't believe Everton and Southampton are getting relegated this year. Sorry, let's go. Let's
Manager of the Year.
It should be a shoe-in for Arteta.
It is a shoe-in for Arteta. Let's not pretend there's any other arguments to be made here.
Well, that's what we have to do on this show. To make it 50 minutes long.
You're going to say Eddie Howe. You're going to say Eddie Howe, and he has been sensational. But if Arteta's going to win the league, mate.
I know.
He's going to win the league.
I know, but I think either one of these is a worthy winner. It's just that it depends. But you're not predicting how to finish in the top 4. I am. If they finish in the top 4, I don't think Arsenal are going to get 100 points. But
if they finish 95 points and Eddie Howe gets them top 4, it's still Arteta.
And I'm saying it would be obviously fine if Arteta won it. I'd be completely fine with that. But I think Newcastle's squad is still not very good. Like, they've got a lot. There are areas of the pitch they're pretty deep. You know, to have Wilson and Isak as attacking options is pretty phenomenal. And centre back, I think, looks a lot stronger these days as well. But to get what he has got out of Almiron, I mean, again, he is out over his skis, but it is still pretty remarkable. To get a tune out of Longstaff, you know, the production he's getting from what I think is overall, you know, an upper mid-table squad.
It's probably the best right back in the league.
It's absolutely sensational. I mean, I don't know. I just think if you swap Arteta out for another manager, you'd still expect this to be a good team that does well. If you swapped Howe out for another manager at this point, you'd say, I don't know.
What you mean.
It's hard not to look at
it. It's got to be
holistically as well.
I know
we should discount last season, but the fact that they were winless in 11 when Howe came in and 19th in the table. Obviously,
crazy.
Arteta has had a transformative impact on Arsenal and taken them to a different stratosphere. But I know 2 8th place finishes, like it's taken him a little bit of time to get here. The scale of the job Howe has done in 1 quarter of the time is insane. Taking them to the first cup final in 24 years. He's set a club record for 15 top flight games undefeated. Like, this isn't.
They've conceded 1 goal in their last 11 games.
Best Premier League outfits. It's insane.
But they're genuinely have the 3rd best numbers.
Yeah, more clean sheets than any other team.
It's crazy.
In Europe's top 5
leagues.
He
has done a monumental job, but if Arteta wins the league, it's an even more monumental job.
There's no bad choice there between these two guys.
No,
there really isn't.
But you mentioned a game earlier. You know, Arsenal's game against City where they swapped out a bunch of players and they played City's strongest side, and you were still really, really good. I thought, okay, now like Arsenal aren't just a good team; they're now a good squad, and I think that's when I felt that like Arteta, I don't know, he's fully transformed the whole club now, and we are seeing his influence at its very peak, and that was hugely impressive.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you boys, like, what, or specifically you, Pat, what is it Arteta's done this season that's had the biggest impact, or is this just the culmination of a lot of stuff, of the process? You know, people always talk of trust in the process. Has he done anything interesting from a tactical perspective? Is it majority personnel? Like, what has made Arteta like the rare version of Arteta this season versus previous seasons?
His whiteboard drawings.
Yeah, probably.
Second half.
I mean, the 11 is massively improved, but also at the beginning, you could tell when he first took over Arsenal, he was really reluctant to press because he knew he didn't have defenders who could cover wide open spaces. He didn't have fullbacks who could really step into midfield, because as good as someone like Tierney is on the ball, if he has a secondary position, it's much more left centre back than it is central midfielder. Moving White, he got kind of a massive stroke of luck falling in his lap in a way with Saliba coming back, because it meant that Saliba went into the heart of defence. He could move White out to right back, and as good as I really like Tomiyasu. I think Tomiyasu's a great defender, but White is a superior player, and that enables him to get a huge amount of progressive passing out of him. Zinchenko is just a lights out signing, just unbelievable signing, like perfect for that position, perfect for the role he wanted him to play. You can 100% see why they were also looking at Lisandro Martinez for that role.
That left-hand side is insane now, isn't it?
It's just amazing. And then, weirdly, actually, Saka and Martinelli haven't really taken a step up this season. They've been exactly the same as they were last season, really. They're just playing. Martinelli's playing more. He has got a step up out of Nketiah. He's got a huge step up out of Odegaard. So there have been like changes that he's been able to make, being able to play Xhaka higher, knowing that there's cover because he's got incredibly mobile centre-backs and that he's got progressive passing out of Zinchenko. Martinelli being able to kind of make bursts into the box because the creativity in the side is kind of biased towards the right because of Ødegaard and Saka both kind of being naturally left-footed and wanting to kind of drift to the right. I think there are a lot of things kind of coming together here, and he's dialed up the press, but I think it's a culmination of like a huge amount of work clearing the chaff out of the club and getting everybody to buy into the way of playing. And to have these performances coming with a team where you've got 3 21-year-olds in the starting 11, a 22-year-old, a couple of 24-year-olds, it's actually
it's youngest or second youngest squad, isn't it?
It's insane how young the squad is. Yeah. It's insane how young the first team is. And you imagine a couple more signings in the summer and you've got a side here which is just going to be like, you'd hope, cemented kind of top 4 contenders at least for the next.
And that is the
decade.
impressive thing about Arteta and Howe, isn't it? That they are like they're guys that overhaul like the entire culture of the club. Obviously, Howe has had financial support. So has Arteta. I think he spent 453 million euros or something, bringing in 73. But I was looking at Howe, probably inspired by Arteta a little bit with his youth drive, recruitment wise. Was it Granquo, Ashby, Gordon, Isak, Botman, all 23 and under? So
Dan Ashworth,
future proven.
Yeah, I don't know if that's Howe.
Dan Ashworth.
I don't think Cole, for example.
It's a good point. Dan Ashworth as well, but Howe and that, the hierarchy, Al, all kind of future-proofing the squad while doing this, what they're doing at the same time is hugely impressive. I mean, when we give Arteta credit for signing players, that's obviously Edu and co as well. Yeah,
I think there's a next stage for Howe. Like how after this has got to continue to add to the squad while maintaining the style, while dealing with European football as well. That'll be a totally different test for him, and that'll be a new one for him. So it'll be interesting to see how he contends for that, because that might be more difficult for him. And also when he starts playing teams which treat Newcastle the way they treat some of the superior sides in the league, they sit back and defend. At that point, you do need more talent to play through teams at that level. So it'll be interesting to see how he deals with new challenges as they present themselves. But this first test, not even a test really, it's no one expected this. The test was keep them in the league, and he's just like sitting another exam entirely.
Well, he might.
He's like, can we get into the top 4? It's like turning up for like your GCSEs and like passing like a university level examination. Like it's unbelievable what he's managed to do.
He might find himself in a similar situation to Graham Potter soon enough, where he's then asked to manage or acquire players of an elite class, and then he's got to overhaul the squad from very good players or middling players that he's getting a tune out of, like you said, Tomlinson, to elite players, because the Saudi owners are willing to throw an awful lot of money at it. Now he's past the bar again, like you said. The next 2 years at that club is going to be so interesting.
It will. All right, let's move on then, because we are running short on time. Player of the year has to be Haaland.
Yeah.
Like I saw a couple of debates. I think Pitchside were having a debate the other day I was watching where, the case was put forward of Martin Ødegaard. We love Martin Ødegaard. He is technically absolutely out of this world and probably been the best midfielder in the league. But Haaland's on course to score 45 goals. It's the hardest thing to do in football is at the back of the net, and Haaland is doing it at a rate we've never seen before in Premier League history.
People have to cheat to
22.
Say he might have made Man City worse as well.
I think they are one-dimensional.
Come on, but it's not him.
Building towards him. That's what they mean. They don't mean he personally has made them worse.
Yeah, I get that.
I don't think they are laying the blame at his feet when they say has he made them worse. They don't think like he as a player has made them worse.
I think they just mean specific examples on Twitter here. But
I think it has to be Haaland.
Yeah.
He
needs 8 goals to set a new record in the Premier League.
Yeah, and blow through it as well.
But I do think those are the top 2. I do think it's Haaland, then Ødegaard, and then I think it's a substantial drop. And then there are lots of players actually who've had really great seasons. Kane, Rashford. If Mitoma continues to have a great second half to the season,
Nick Pope.
Zinchenko could be in there. Nick Pope definitely. Loads and loads of guys.
Yeah, young player of the year, he's going to win both, isn't he? He's going to win young and player.
Well, maybe. If Arsenal do win the league, you could imagine them giving Haaland best player, and they're like, right, okay, we're going to give... they probably would pick Saka, wouldn't they?
Yeah, if you believe that, then you should bet on it, because he's 4-1. So you could earn a pretty penny if you think that is the case. I think he's going to comfortably win both awards. We've seen it in the past of players winning both awards, haven't we? Just been
I think it's boring. I don't think
if Arsenal win the league, I think they've not tried to reinvent the award, but they've tried to be more diplomatic with it. Like the last time a forward won it was Salah in 17-18, and the only out-and-out number 9 that's
just because KDB's been a freak,
the last
isn't it?
10 years. But I think if Arsenal win the league, Odegaard does maybe stand a better chance if he carries on going at 0.7 goals and assists per 90, a better chance than we're maybe giving him credit for here, particularly if City end up with nothing.
I think if any striker...
They'll give him the golden boot, won't they? I know he is nailed on to win
but if any striker had scored at the rate Haaland had across the last 5 years, they'd have won it for sure.
Yeah, and we're already taking it for granted to an extent.
Right.
I think these things are always really weird the way they're picked. I remember when Ozil got like 19 assists in 2015-16, didn't make team.
Yeah, because it's been like Diaz, Van Dijk,
so silly.
Obviously KDB twice in the last 3 years.
I do think that the young player of the year should be changed to rookie of the year, a player whose first season is
like
in
first
the Premier
season
League.
getting over 1,000 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
We had this debate, didn't we, when Foden won it last year and Saka didn't, I think.
Yeah, it's crap, isn't it?
Well, then it would probably be Saliba, unless there's somebody really obvious I'm not thinking of.
Martinelli.
No, he's had over 1,000 minutes in a season
Has
before.
He?
Yeah. I don't know who else would be up there. If it's rookie, so does it have to be a young player who's getting 1,000 minutes?
Who's played over 1,000 minutes yet
in their first campaign?
So they also have to meet the age requirement and the minutes requirement.
Yeah, it can't be like I think a 28-year-old.
Yeah, I mean like that gets kind of difficult, doesn't it?
All right, so we're saying Haaland and potentially Saka for young player.
Yeah.
Let's move into some alternate categories, and these were suggested by the Discord. If you want to get involved, there's a link in the description.
Should we treat these like
below.
quick fire questions?
We'll do these quick fire. These are going to be like quick fire questions. Signing of the season. Now, I think we did do this in our pre-seasons. I said Haaland, you said Nick Pope, Hamster. So 2 really decent shouts. But I think we should probably make this January, just because it is a mid-season prediction, isn't it? A January signing, that's going to go on and be exceptional across the second half of the season. Who do we think here?
Seminal impact.
Yeah, who's going to have a major impact in the side? I think for me, I'm going to go Pedro Porro.
Well, it has to be if you're going to put Spurs in the top 4.
I think Pedro Porro is going to be the guy that's going to be transformative of Conte's wing-back role.
You've got a lot of eggs in his basket,
all sorts of chances.
Every show we've been on together, you're saying he's pushing him into the top 4.
Yeah, and I think he will. So I'm going to say Pedro Porro for mine.
I respect it as puncher.
That's a good one.
What do you think? What business
Who's
do you
saying
like in
Sabitzer?
general?
Who's saying Sabitzer?
I really liked Sabitzer, but I don't think it really changes the calculus. Like I think I would have put United in the top 4 regardless. I don't think so. As good,
even with Eriksen's injury,
he might be. Yeah, I think so. He might be amazing, but I don't think he really changes your season. I still would have put you. Probably,
I think if
it might be a difference between 4th and 3rd for me. You're a long way ahead of other
but if Eriksen was out for the whole of the second half of the season,
yeah,
which he is,
I know, but I like Fred. I think quite a lot more than other people do. So I mean, I do think Trossard and Jorginho could be the difference between Arsenal not winning the title and winning the title.
Yeah. You like Tete earlier, you were saying?
I do like Tete. I think Tete is really, really good. I think that's exactly the kind of signing that I want to see Leicester make.
None of us have said Enzo or Mudryk.
Well, it doesn't change their future, does it?
I think
Enzo
change
their present, rather.
I think Enzo does change the presence from 10th.
But does it? He doesn't get Champions League football for them.
I don't think he gets Champions League football, no. But I think at this point, if I said this on the live stream, if we start to see a really good brand of football from Chelsea, and Potter, his vision becomes a lot clearer, and Enzo is at the heartbeat of that, then that move will be a lot more palatable for everyone, I think. A really seismic transfer. I really like Jorginho to Arsenal.
You're going to say Jorginho, because this is quick fire.
We're looking at the top half of the table. There's not a lot of inspiring or transfers, like game-changing transfers. Bottom half.
You liked Wolves though. You like Wolves' business, and it seems like you're backing them to pull away from the relegation zone. Is there one of those that you think is going to be the one making that happen?
Cunha was costly, but a lot of upside, and I think they were really struggling to connect the midfield to the attack, weren't they? So he made a lot of sense in that regard. So I can see him changing the game in that way.
Having like an actual centre forward?
Yeah, or actually being able to get the ball to a centre forward.
Say a name then. What are you going for?
Jorginho, probably.
Okay, Jorginho. Biggest switch up then. This is the most dramatic swing position-wise. So from now to the end of the season, who's going to have the most dramatic swing? You're going Wolves. I'm going to say Fulham, I think. I'm going to say negatively Fulham.
Yeah, well, it can't be positively. Otherwise we're top of the league.
Because, I mean, the underlying numbers aren't particularly pretty for Fulham, are they? I think they've got the worst expected goals against in the entire division. And I do think that at some stage, the unbelievable scoring nature of Mitrovic might just halt for a 5 to 10 game run, and then he starts again. But that 5 to 10 game run will be enough to see them drop from 17th to 14th. And I think that 7 position swing is hard to find anywhere else in the league.
I could see West Ham. Where are West Ham now?
West Ham, as we speak
like 16th,
today, Pato, are 16th.
Yeah, see, West Ham actually are.
You can see them doing
the
better
underlying
than
numbers say that West Ham are about the 9th best team in the league, which actually is what their numbers said at the end of last season.
Are you going to say that though?
Yeah, I'm going to say West Ham.
Okay.
I think West Ham are actually a totally good side. I do. I don't know if I'd have signed Ings permanently, but Ings does just get Premier League goals. Yeah. I think they're completely fine.
Sacking him would be so premature.
Okay, so we've got Fulham, West Ham. Oh, you said Wolves, didn't you? Sorry,
Wolves.
I forgot you already said
I'll
Wolves.
be quick with that one. Divid with the other
But
one.
do you think you don't think Wolves will make it into the top half, right?
No, I think probably like 12. I think them and like Crystal Palace will change places. But I'll say Crystal Palace for the next one.
The next one is...
Oh no, sorry, for this one. In terms of...
You're going to say Crystal Palace?
Yeah, this can be a positive or a negative switch up.
Oh right, so Wolves positive. Yeah, Crystal Palace I think could tumble. And I had them as my like overachievers at the start of the season, and they started really well, didn't they? But every time I see Mateta start over Edouard, I want to gouge my own eyes out.
It's kind of crazy that Chelsea have spent this amount of money, and yet we don't really think that they're going to be one of the main movers.
Yeah, well, no one said Mudryk, have they?
No. All right, well, what about most improved player across the second half of the season? From now to the end of the season, which player is going to have the biggest upswing in form?
Who's been...
It's a great question. I mean, I've gone with Wolves improving. So do I see anyone within that Wolves starting lineup really taking the game by the scruff of the neck, the season by the scruff of the neck even?
Likewise for you might pick a West Ham player.
Yeah, I could go for like a Paquetá.
Neto. Well, I'd see Pedro Neto actually do something in the second half of the season. Daniel Podence has been carrying them, hasn't he, on in goal scoring capacity?
Will his legs and his injuries hold him out?
I think Liverpool is quite a good one to go for this.
Dude, do you think they're going to have upside second half of the season?
I just don't think they'll be as bad.
Yeah, I think Salah will be better.
So you're going to say Salah?
Probably not. Just because I just think there's more interesting. I'm not very interested in Liverpool this season. It's nice to not have to talk to them about them. I think Paquetá will probably have a good second half of the season. I think if he does play, I think Mount will have a much better second half of the season. I think that Chelsea will have a lot more options for him. Hopefully the style of play will improve. If Enzo is playing in a deep role, it means Mount will get to play further forward and maybe be relieved of some defensive burden, I guess. Yeah, I'll say Mount, because I still think Mount is a top-class player, and he's been dogged.
I'm going to say Heung-min Son.
Yeah,
I think Son just disastrous first half of the season.
I don't think Danuma's going to take his part.
No, I think he's going to have a large upswing second half of the season. I just can't see him being that bad again for 6 months.
Yeah.
He's just too good of a player to continue it across the course of a season.
I've gone, prior to like Unai Emery actually turning Aston Villa around. 2 or 3 weeks ago, I'd have backed like Villa to improve as a whole and someone at Villa like a Buendia. For example, to just put up much better numbers than they were under Gerrard, but that's kind of already happening, isn't it?
Yeah, Emery loves Buendia, doesn't he?
I think that's it, category-wise, because I think best head loss of the season isn't really a prediction.
Sam.
I'm not sure how. Yeah, it's Obaseki.
Or George. George is like Arsenal winning the league, and George has actually gone off the deep end.
Yeah, no, and the vitriol against Trossard and Jorginho a week ago to now suddenly loving them is a sight to behold. Let's finish with his personal then, from Carl Barks. Toilet roll, scrunch or fold?
Jesus Christ.
Surely we haven't got any scrunches on this panel.
I'm not going to answer this question. This is demeaning.
Yeah, it is really demeaning. Obviously fold though.
Obviously, mate, I'm using...
Somebody said to me the other day they stand up and wipe, by the way.
What? Was it Zach?
I can't remember, it might have been.
Don't name and shame. But it does strike me as something you'd do. I'm using... a wet wipe as well. First wipe.
This is just awful. This is honestly
please bring this
the
to
worst personal question.
Shout out Saxons
Carl
at
Barr.
Aldi.
It's an absolute disgrace. I hope it's flushable. Okay, that is it for another episode of Sunday Vibes. Those are our mid-season predictions. I hope you enjoyed it. Get your mid-season predictions in the comments below. We'll be interested to hear what you're saying. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button. Go and watch other Sunday Vibes. Hit subscribe to Football Daily. Thanks very much for watching, everybody. See you later. Auf Wiedersehen.